Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Now That You Mentioned It podcast with Roll, Jay, and RJ.
I'm Roll.
I'm Jay.
And I'm RJ.
We just want to thank you guys for another glorious week. Thank you guys for all the support, all the love, all the feedback. We really do appreciate it. I want to throw another shout out to the guys at the A Full podcast. Listen to a couple of your guys' episodes. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. But yeah, you can follow us here on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. Click the little bell so you can get our content with new content when it comes out. Make sure you listen to our audio only format on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Go hit up our social media on Facebook. Go hit up our Instagram. Go hit up our YouTube page. Go hit up our TikTok and Reddit. And I think I covered it. And don't forget, guys, go hit us up at nowthatyoumentionit.org to get all of our content. And pretty soon I'm going to throw a link up there so you guys can go shop our merch. Our new Now That You Mentioned It podcast shirts and introduction.
Wait a minute. I don't ever remember seeing in the contract about this merch bullshit. I better make sure I get my money.
Hey, I split everything 3 ways. So the 30 cents that I make per shirt, you're going to get 10 cents of it, brother.
How you boys doing tonight?
I want to see receipts. I want to see receipts, homeboy.
Hey, hold on. In order to get your 30% back, you also got to commit 30% to buying the shirts and.
Say, man.
How about we get a little follow through on our social media and
maybe share the podcast every once in a while.
My stimulus check ain't coming yet, man.
Blow the dust off your keypad there. Maybe log into your Facebook.
I still have Facebook.
You're once every 6 months visit to Facebook.
That's why I sent you both this week's episode so you could, as a reminder, so you could share it.
Okay.
Anyway.
But this week.
Go ahead, finish.
I was going to say this has been an interesting week. We're starting to move into that time of year where tax time is rolling up. Everybody's starting to come into that tax season, and it's going to be especially important for a lot of people this year, just because of the past year and how things have been. And part of our show today, we're going to follow up with what we talked about last week with. The Mega Million jackpot being at $1 billion, and kind of led us down a little rabbit hole to talk about other things. So we went back this week and we kind of reviewed the documentary, 30 for 30, which I went back and watched again. I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. It actually came out in 2012, so it's been out for about 8 years. It may be a little outdated, some of the references in there when you watch it, some of the athletes that you watch, But it kind of led to another interesting discussion about, one of the richest athletes of all time, Tiger Woods. So it kind of led us to go watch the Tiger Woods documentary. And we're going to touch on part 1 of that this week. We'll follow up on the second part at a later date. It's a pretty long documentary, guys. It's like 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
It's a good one, though.
But it is good, man. There's some good stuff in there. But what were you going to say, bro? You had something.
Oh no, I was just going to make the comment that I got to talk to my social media person, my social media assistant Annabelle, and she's following up on all that stuff for me, so that that I'm keeping up my end on the getting the Now That You Mentioned It podcast.
You really should hire her as your social media.
I mean, me and her need to talk so we can make sure she's getting properly compensated for that.
Say, man, private school tuition, all the meals,
free over her head.
What the hell?
Okay, the roof, fine. I'll give you that one. The private school tuition, that's your decision.
Ooh,
I'm just saying.
Touché.
So let me get this straight.
No one held a gun to your head and said,
I should have sent your ass to public school then. That's what I'm hearing.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you can't hold it over our head when you also made the decision to send us there.
Yeah.
But hey, real quick, because you brought up taxes, I saw this one TikTok where they're saying that we should all get together and just not pay our taxes this year. That'll be our stimulus check.
Like that would ever happen.
I know. Like, let me know how that works out for you.
I tell you what,
you taxes.
You can't get 10 people in a room to agree to that, let alone 280 million tax-paying Americans.
Well, I mean, it depends on who's all in the room, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm very fortunate. I make a pretty decent living, and I can tell you that the amount of taxes that I've paid just in probably the last 15 years is pretty staggering, and it's one of those, sometimes you can kind of see both sides. Obviously, we've talked about before that there needs to be some sort of balance, but that's why part of me is this huge, more of a Republican / conservative type of approach in things, because again, I just have my faith in our federal government is relatively low, because I feel like we're so overburdened with pork barrel programs, that we're very inefficient on how we actually spend the money, much less oversight. So,
and we even talked about a couple of shows ago about the way that you're taxed on your income anyway. I mean, how many different taxes do you pay on the same money? In payroll taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, this tax, that tax, you're paying 8, 9, 10 different taxes on the same money. And, the more and more that you tax that money, the less and less value that it has. And just, it's good that we have a couple of different views here, because you two are self-employed. So the way you guys go about filing your taxes is totally different from the way I go about filing my taxes, because I'm not self-employed. I work for a company. I get a W-2 every year. But on my taxes throughout the year, I claim the maximum amount of deductions that I can, so that I get the most amount of my money throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, I wind up paying some taxes to the government. And I don't mind that. Because for those of you who don't understand what that means, when you get money back from the government at the end of the year on your tax return, it's because you basically made an interest-free loan to the government for a year. You loaned them your money for a year. And what other program in the world can the United States government go borrow money from anybody and not have to pay interest on it? Oh, wait a minute, income tax. Because they tax you because, you don't claim that many dependents, because at the end of the year, you're, man, I'm getting that big old fat check back. I'm getting that, I'm getting all that money back on my taxes. But you could have taken that same money throughout the year, invested it, saved it, put it in a savings bond, and you would get more return on that money than what you're getting back at the end of the year, when you think you're just getting this big old fat check that you're going to go buy a new TV with.
Well, that's an interesting point, bro.
It is.
And I would tell you this, though. I think most people don't think that way. That they think getting the lump sum back at the end of, at sometime in May or April, late April, early May, when they file their tax return, or sooner if
because most people, I'll tell you what, most people on January 31st are waiting for that W-2 to come in, because they're going to file their taxes as soon as they can, because anybody who's going to get money back from the government wants that money as soon as possible.
Right.
I wait till the latest I can. I'm filing April 13th, April 14th, because I know that I'm going to have to pay taxes this year. So I wait till the very last minute to file my taxes, because I know I'm going to have to cut a check to the government. And I don't mind that, because I got mine throughout the year.
I haven't finalized the tax return on April 15th in about 12 years.
Well, again, though, because it's different when you're self-employed.
Yeah, of course.
Because you guys, you guys have different deductions you can take. there's a whole lot gathering receipts and things like that that I don't have to go through. I can take the standard.
Sometimes too, when you're an investor, you're waiting on other tax return documents to come in. So, when you're waiting on your K-1s for some of your investments, if those entities doesn't have all the paperwork, I mean, they have a different set of deadlines.
Yeah.
So you pay what you estimate your taxes are going to be, and then your actual tax returns probably ain't going to get done until September or October.
Yeah.
You got to.
By law, companies have to have your W-2 out by the 31st of January, no later than 31st of January.
Right.
Otherwise, they're subject to fine. So, for a guy like me who works for a company, a corporation, and I get that W-2, I pretty much can plan our tax strategy early on in the year, because I know that, for me and my wife, what pretty much we make, what our returns are going to look like and things like that. I have a pretty good idea by mid-January, but I don't file those taxes until the end of April, because I don't, I mean, if they're going to get my money, they're going to wait for it, just like I have to wait for my money. So,
well, but anyway, going back to my point, I think the mindset of the person that's waiting to get that lump sum is the fact that you're not really educated in money management. And so for some people, better, believe it or not, it is actually better that they get, let's just call it that the difference between you claiming the utmost deductions you can and getting, say, another $100 a month throughout the year, versus getting $1,200 in a one-time lump sum when you get your tax return.
Yeah,
that some people don't have the discipline or the understanding to say, you know what, if I take 12 $100 payments and save it or invest it or just don't spend it, that in that same 12-month calendar time frame, I'll have more money than the one-time $1,200 check that I get back as a refund.
And the thing is, man, when they get that big lump sum, the first thing that's coming to their mind is, oh man, I got a little windfall. Let me go spend some of it.
Exactly.
And that's why you have or let me go, because okay. And when the $600 stimulus check came in, what do retailers do? They put their big ticket items out there for sale. We talked about it, man. Walmart had TVs on sale for $550 because they know somebody's coming into a $600 check. And somebody's going to get that check, and they're going to look at that TV and they go, "Man, I really would be nice to have that nice TV. Oh, I got $600 right here. Let me go get that TV real quick." And so when they get that tax, that windfall at the end of the end of the year when they get their returns back, it's just money spent. And and a lot of people, majority of people, I think, have the sensibility to do something well with that money, go pay some bills. I mean, because the type of industry that I'm in, usually around tax time, you and I, bro, were talking off the screen here a minute ago, that we see a lot of people come and pay off their loans at this time of year because they get that money back. And hey, man, let me go get out of this, loan real quick and go pay them the money they owe and be done with it. So a lot of people will use it for the purposes that it's intended to, but not everybody, like you said, is that disciplined to do something like that.
Well, and again, like if they got a $600, I mean, and again, we're just throwing out numbers, but let me go back to my example. If you got $1,200 back on your tax return, or even a stimulus payment, if you will, provided that overall you're able to cover your general monthly expenses, and say you do have that, say they had a loan with you for $800 of that $1,200. They pay you off, they get rid of the note, right? Mm-hmm. And the discipline part comes in and saying, well, I still have $400 left. Let me put that up and don't use it. Don't spend it, right? So that maybe they don't have to come to you and borrow $800 again, because they have windfall, and that's what's hard. But
Yeah.
But we're also talking in generalities here, because there are some people that legitimately, I mean, they've got to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, just to make ends meet.
No, of course.
You're always
right.
You're always pushing $1 from this pocket to the other, because the truth is you barely make enough to cover your living expenses, and you really don't have savings. Right?
Yep.
And
that's sad reality, man. But
well, I think money management's a great way to transition into the broke 30 for 30.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, it just leads us to that whole, because we're not financially savvy, and our public school system does a shitty job of teaching finances to kids, when that really should be one of the major focuses of high school. Is let's learn about money management, but you just don't. You may take a economics class, but that
you don't learn about tax code in there.
I mean, and you don't learn about these kind of things. And if you're an athlete of some ability, coming out of high school, going into college, and that there's some athletes that are destined to get into that realm of, hey, I'm going to be a pro athlete and start making some money. I mean, everybody knew LeBron was going to be a star.
Right.
There's certain kids you can look at, everybody knew Matthew Stafford when he was at Highland Park, knew he was going to be something in he was going to make it as a pro because he had all the tools. And so, when I went back and reviewed this documentary and I started looking at, it blew my mind. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit last week when we talked about lotto winners, but I went back and I hadn't seen the documentary probably 4 or 5 years. It came out in 2012. It's been a while since I saw it, and just to hear some of the numbers of what some of these athletes were spending is just staggering. I think the biggest number that I heard on there was Mike Tyson, who in his career made over $300 million.
I thought it was like 400.
Maybe it was 400. But either though, man, 300 million.
Either way,
Either way.
Yeah.
When you have to declare bankruptcy after that kind of windfall in your lifetime, it's a problem. It's a problem for a lot of athletes, and it was just crazy.
Well, and part of it really boils down to the fact that when you supposedly earn $1 million, you really don't earn $1 million.
No. Yeah, it was many of those athletes we're talking about. They had to learn about taxes the hard way. When they got that, when they got their first game check and it wasn't for as much as they thought it was going to be. I think Andre Rison was like, "Yeah, after I got my check, I went upstairs, and that's why I learned about taxes." You learn that if you get a check for $100,000, you're probably only going to take home about 60 grand of that because Uncle Sam's going to take their 40% off the top. And then for a lot of these athletes, they're not just paying taxes to the federal government; they're paying taxes in all the states where they play games.
I was just about to bring that up. Is that I think that's why I know that's why certain athletes, when they become free agents, they're looking to go to Texas, Florida, the states where there's no state income tax.
But they still have to go play games in other cities and other states where they're going to be a state, and they have to pay income tax on that money. Even international athletes that owe money in different countries. They're making all this money, but they owe taxes in Sweden and taxes in Europe and taxes in the United States. Like, it's just crazy the amount of taxes these guys are paying on this money.
Well, we're also talking, I mean, you're talking strictly taxes. I'm also, what I was referring to, though, is, contracts are always quoted in the gross aggregate amount, but you still have to pay an attorney.
Yep.
First you're paying your agent.
Yep.
And you still have an attorney who's not necessarily because your agent, who is usually an attorney is covering your negotiation, your contract, and probably some of your business dealings, but he's not handling. He may not necessarily be handling all your personal legal issues. Then you got to get your accounting people involved, right? And then if you've got special handlers that you're employing, so it's quite easily, again, that $1 million. We just take $1 million. By the time you cut everybody in their portion of that, and then taxes on top, I mean, you might be less than half of that money. So, but in your mind, you're thinking, I've got up to $1 million. And if you're not disciplined or even educated and trained, that's saying, hey, just because I have a check for $1 million, the truth of the matter is what's my spending ability of that is this.
Yeah.
It's again, just to pull a number out is, let's say 500,000, half of what the check was written for, because of all the expenses and the taxes. And again, if you're not prepared for it, you go out and you spend $600,000-700,000 of that $1 million thinking, well, I got $1 million. When in reality, you're upside down now because you really spent more.
What I forgot about the documentary that kind of shocked me when I watched it again was the fact that I forgot that they talked about how these athletes don't get paid year round from their contracts. Like, they only get paid when they're in season. So they were talking about how some of these athletes are literally living paycheck to paycheck in season. And then, before you know it, you're unemployed for 4 months out of the year, whatever your off season is. And if you don't have endorsement deals, if you don't have other money coming in, then you're basically don't have any money coming in for 4 months. And before you know it, if you're used to spending $10,000 a week on things, when you got $10,000 a week coming in, but then you don't have that $10,000 a week coming in anymore, and you're still spending $10,000 a week, you're screwed, man.
Yeah.
Like, they were talking about, they brought up the lockout, the NFL lockout. I believe it was 1995. Mm-hmm. That a lot of these, maybe it was 2005. I think it was a 2005 NFL lockout. I can't remember what year it was, but they were talking about how some of these NFL players were having to go get loans to cover expenses because they didn't have the money because they weren't getting paid. But yet the year before, they probably made, if you have a $5 million a year contract, they probably made, okay, so $5 million a year turns into 2.5, whatever, but it's still $2.5 million in a year. And how can you not survive off $2.5 million in a year?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, obviously the documentary mentioned that a part of it had to do with family.
Yeah.
And it was hard for a lot of them to say no. Like, what's his name? Kozar?
Bonnie Kozar.
Yeah, I think he said at one point he was supporting like up to 25 families. And that's just insane. I know that to some extent these people
dude was paying for 30 cell phone bills. He's like, and I only use one cell phone.
Exactly.
Like, Jesus Christ, man.
Well, not only that, and then his dad was,
siphoning money off the top.
Oh my God. And he had his own side deals. I mean, but that, again, that just goes to show when you don't have the right, I guess, education or someone teaching you. I know that the NFL, well, all these pro leagues now, they have these programs in to help educate new players and to kind of get them to thinking about, even as rookies, thinking about life after the sport, because that's the other thing. You never know when the gravy train is going to end.
Yeah,
that's the thing, because some of these guys, particularly when you're young, you're all of a sudden, again, you've got this windfall of money coming in, and you think, oh, that's fine. I'll have next season, I'll have another round of checks, and the season after that. And then when I sign up my next contract and I get even more money, then I'll be fine. So it's okay for me to spend this today. And because again, the mindset is there's more coming. Well,
Yeah.
but again, if you don't plan and if you don't structure, and then all of a sudden you have a career-ending injury.
Yeah, that's one of the things they talked about in the documentary was these players that have career-ending injuries that now the money stops flowing.
Exactly. And not just that, you got medical bills to pay for on top of that. And the other thing is that in some instances, like even though your career's over, you still got children you have to raise. Like I think it said Evander Holyfield had like 9 baby mamas or something.
11 children
with 9 different women. Yeah, exactly. So
and the amount of child support these guys are paying, man. Like, I mean, and it's not just about money, man. You have to learn to control your libido when you're an athlete like that, because it's too easy for these girls to just throw themselves at you because they're athletes. But, they talked about that website on there, goldballer.com or whatever it was, where these girls would get alerts whenever an athlete was at a club. They would pay for this service to get an alert when an athlete was at a club so they could go hang out with the athlete and try to hook up, and try to get pregnant by this guy, because they knew if they got pregnant by an athlete, they're getting paid. Yeah. God almighty, man. It was just, when they were talking about the amounts that these guys were spending in child support and, and then they talk about, the fact that these guys don't know any better, that once they stop playing and they're not making that money, that they can go back to a judge and request that child support get lowered because they're not making that kind of money anymore. None of them ever think about that, and they still continue to pay the same amount of money, thinking that's what they have to do.
Not just that, I think, I don't know that the documentary really touched on this, but even though you come into that kind of money, you're not really taught, like, just because you come into the money doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be taught how to leverage your credit. Like, I just say that because the one guy who, Cersei, I think was his last name, who got the $60,000 injury settlement, he went and paid $50,000 cash because he had to have the brand new Hummer.
Yeah.
But, even though he had the cash, if he would have had good credit, he could have still just paid it and gone and invested that money somewhere else. Just put a down payment and go let your money make money for you. And not to mention, like I said earlier, he had to give $6,000 of that to his wife for child support. So, I think going back to what my dad was saying is, you don't want to think about, obviously your career being over early, but you have to plan that this you have to do something after life as a pro athlete, because even Tom Brady's day is going to come, and at that, he's an anomaly. He's the exception to the rule.
Yeah, guys like Dirk don't. I mean, you're not going to have NBA players that are playing 21 years.
Exactly, that's common.
It just isn't. I mean, I think they said that the average NFL lifespan is less than 10 seasons. So yeah, you may make that money for 6 or 8 years, but I mean, it's hard to think about the fact that you're retired at the age of 35, because most of these guys start playing young. It brings up a good point. It actually made me think about this, the whole Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff trade. I was like, man, why would the Rams trade for Matthew Stafford? It seems like he's been in the league.
Because they got Jared Goff.
Well, no, but I know the reason why. I'm just saying, it seems like Matthew Stafford has been playing for 20 years. But then I go to realize he's only been, he was drafted in 2008?
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2008 draft?
Something like that, yeah.
No, that's not right. Hold on.
Well, regardless, I think, part of it is also who else can they go get? I mean, let's be honest, even though he's not under contract, Dak wants to be here and the Cowboys want him here. And I think ultimately we will see a deal get done. But who are you going to go? Who else are you going to go get? Mitch Trubisky? I mean, the quarterbacks available just aren't. There aren't a plethora of quarterbacks who can go win you.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2008 and started in 2009. So I mean, the guy's been in the league 11 years, and he's 32 years old. So he's been playing since he's 23. He's going to be retired by the age of 35. He probably has a good 3 years left in him. 3-4 more years. I mean, not everybody's Tom Brady. Not everybody's going to play 17 seasons, you know?
Right.
So it's crazy to think that a lot of these guys are going to be done within 10 years. So if you're 23, you know, coming out of college, or however old you are coming out of college, 22, 21, and you're done by the age of 30, making the biggest chunk of money you're probably going to make in your life, unless you're popular and have endorsement deals. I mean, you think about the fact that Zeke just signed, what, a $90 million contract?
Yep.
But Zeke doesn't endorse anything. Like, I don't see Zeke endorsing anything. You see Dak endorsing everything. Dak can do Sleep Number, Sprite, Pepsi,
Chunky
Soup. I mean, he's got endorsement deals all over the damn place.
Well, but I mean, I think that also that's the marketability of his personality. I think Zeke's personality just he probably doesn't attract that. He doesn't have that same persona that I think retailers really are looking for. Plus, it didn't help about his
accusation
parade
shenanigans,
and the sexual assault stuff that followed him out of college. That really, you know, retailers are like, well, we can't have this guy endorsing our product because what kind of message is that going to send? And, you know, how are our consumers going to react if, you know, we have this guy who has questionable judgment, questionable actions, and, you know, obviously has issues, even if he's not necessarily guilty of everything that he was accused of.
He was accused of it, and that's enough.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, that there was something there. To what degree, we'll never really know, but there was something there. And so, you know, retailers got to say, well, man, we can't touch that. That's just like, I mean, you know, we're going to talk about Tiger Woods a little bit. And it's one of the things that it's not in this first part of the documentary, but you remember, you know, when we get into the entirety of Tiger Woods, that, you know, when he had his episode and his world came crashing down, man, advertisers and endorsers were they were jumping off the bandwagon like that. I mean, because they had to. They could not be seen as being affiliated with a womanizer, a drunk, you know, his kind of golden boy, untouchable persona,
squeaky clean,
all of a sudden cracked. Yeah. And when it cracked, it crumbled. But, you know, guys, and here, you know, now that you mention it, that's the fluidity of our thing. You know, maybe let's chair Tiger Woods all together for the next segment, the next episode. We can talk about both, because one thing we really didn't discuss, and we're kind of hinting at it because of all this discussion, is this Sunday is the Super Bowl, right? Yeah. And by the time this episode airs, the Super Bowl will have been played. So what I would like to do is maybe kind of get predictions from each of you. Kind of let's talk about the phenomenon of Tom Brady, because remember early on during the pandemic when we talked about the whole when the news broke that Tom Brady was leaving New England, and all three of us kind of came on here and said, "Oh, now we're going to see, you know, all the chinks in Tom Brady's armor, and that he's human." Well, that son of a bitch is back in the Super Bowl, right?
Well, hold on. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about that. But one thing I wanted to point out about what you were talking about, the Zeke and Dak thing, I think part of it is also the position. Quarterbacks obviously get more they're the most important position in the league when you really think about it.
Right.
Tell me, what running back have you really seen in the last year do a commercial? Name one. Have you seen Christian McCaffrey in an ad? Dalvin Cook?
Lots. I've seen Christian McCaffrey in a lot. He's done like probably 3 or 4 commercials for different groups.
But I'll be honest. At the same time, I'm the last person to pay attention to commercials. So
Right.
Yeah.
No, Christian McCaffrey, he's gotten endorsements and he's come out in several commercials. But to your point, I agree with you. I agree that, but also, RJ, there's very few athletes that are in a national platform for advertising. Okay, a lot of Dak stuff is typically regional to Dallas, right? Just like because we don't know what advertising is in LA. We don't know who's doing all the endorsements in LA because I guarantee you Dak's commercials aren't, I mean, maybe the ones for mainstream like Pepsi and stuff, he might get some airtime there, Chunky Soup, but a lot of their advertising is also going to be targeted specifically to that market because any athlete's marketability is somewhat limited by the region, right? So you're not going to be showing Dak Prescott commercials in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Because that's Steeler country. They hate the Cowboys. So up there, they're going to have a Steeler that's doing the same damn commercial for the most part that Dak's doing for that product that's going to show regionally up there.
Yeah, I think it takes a special kind of athlete to be able to be marketed nationwide. LeBron, Jordan, Tiger. I think,
hopefully soon Luka.
I was gonna say I think Luka can get there.
Yeah.
Especially, because a lot of these guys when they get to that level of popularity, because I know Luka's jersey's already I think last year was one of the top sellers in the NBA.
And he was second in All-Star voting.
Yeah, and so he has a national appeal.
Yeah.
And so, you're right. Dak may not be a national powerhouse when it comes to advertising, but at the very least, even if it's regional, he's getting paid by national companies. Chunky Campbell Soup is a national entity. Sleep Number, Pepsi.
All I'm saying though, bro, is that Chunky Soup is not only signing Dak to endorse their product. They're signing multiple.
I'll tell you who they need to stop giving endorsement deals to.
Who?
That garbage can Jalen Smith.
Oh my God.
It would not hurt me at all if I never saw another what is it, Reliant or TXU commercial with Jalen Smith in it.
Oh
well, I'll tell you what, your dad hinted on the Super Bowl here, and I'll tell you what, I've never ever hidden or even whitewashed my hatred for two particular quarterbacks, and that's Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I hate Aaron Rodgers, dude. I posted on YouTube about
beep alert, censor alert.
He will be censored.
I posted on Facebook a couple years ago, and it popped up on my Facebook again this year. And
I saw that.
We're playing in the NFC Championship game. I said, you know what? If the plane went down and both of them were on it, I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep, man.
Damn.
I would not lose a wink of sleep.
Wow.
Now, honestly, in the Super Bowl, I can't tell you any of the defensive linemen for Kansas City, but I hope one of them spears Tom Brady in his 47-year-old hip and breaks it. I honestly, to me, in the back of my mind, because you guys know I believe in UFOs. I've stated that on this podcast many times. That there's going to come a day when that dude dies, when his earthly shell dies, that they're going to cut him open and realize that dude's a UFO, dude. He's an alien. He's not of this world. He's either an alien or a robot. He's one of the two. And I think that at some point they're going to have to void all 20 of his Super Bowl wins because they're going to prove that he's not human. It has to. There's no way, dude. There's no way somebody can be that good.
Well, let me put something out there to you guys. Do you realize, this is his 10th Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
All right, and his record is 6-4. I mean, no, 6-3 right now. He's 6-3. This will be his 10th Super Bowl. But do you realize that the other two of those 3 Super Bowls he lost, 2 of them were because of because of Eli Manning's. You could call them luck catches.
Yeah.
So he theoretically could be a couple of passes away from being 8-1.
Yeah, but he's also on the flip side. If Seattle runs it, that's another one he loses. And what was the other one? There's another one they almost lost.
Well, if freaking Atlanta doesn't choke,
that one, and not to mention that, not to sound like a bitter Cowboys fan, but if the that was the same year, so I guess it's a moot point. Never mind. That would have been the year they beat the Seahawks, because that's why I was so mad about that year. I felt like not only did the Cowboys get cheated, but they wouldn't have lost that postseason. But I can't prove that. But
I will say this.
Either way,
on my hit list of hatred, Houston, you can rest assured that you're number 3. Because I guarantee you, I hate Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady more than I hate Houston. I just do. And especially Aaron Rodgers is like my number 1 most hated person of all time, dude.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. That's arrogant.
Yeah. I just wish somebody would just pop that dude in his face one time and just, oh God, somebody spear him. They need a good 1970 NFL spear, and just take that dude out, man. I hate Aaron Rodgers.
Scorched earth, man. Talk about scorched earth.
I got to be honest with you. I would much rather, to me, I'm not about that kind of taking him out. I'd rather
beat him.
Yeah, I would rather there be a defensive back that picks him off 3 times in a game, right? Yeah. And maybe 2 of them get run back for touchdowns, right?
Well, let me put it this way. I hope that happens to him one day, and then on his way out of the stadium, the sniper takes a shot at him.
Wow,
damn, man. So much editing is going to have to go into this episode. But
man.
No, I don't like either one of them either. They both, I'm not going to sit here and say they suck, because they've made some great plays, both of them. More so Tom Brady, obviously, going to 10 Super Bowls. I mean, it's.
Oh, look. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say it's, I know how you guys feel about LeBron, but LeBron's been in the same amount of finals. Records are different, but, in my opinion, one of those should be changed, or not changed, but, he lost Kyrie and Kevin Love in the same season. But anyway, anyways,
what I would tell you is that, in basketball, he's one of 5 people, maybe 6, right? So he has a greater impact on the outcome of that game. So when you say he lost, you can also say a lot of that loss falls greater on LeBron's shoulders than that does Tom Brady's, because Tom Brady is one of 22 players. Okay. And while he's the most important player on the field, he still has to be a part of a larger team that functions to get the success that he's gotten. So
I'm glad you bring that up, because that ties into something that Jay said earlier that I meant to, or no, it was when you said you would rather a DB pick off Aaron Rodgers 3 times. Don't get me wrong, he's great, but he threw 3 picks in the NFC Championship game. They're going to the Super Bowl because of the defense. I mean,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, your dad talks about how Tom Brady is 122. They can't control the defense and all that. And you know why LeBron doesn't bother me as much as Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and it's because I hate Aaron Rodgers just because he's in the NFC. And what
we lost to him twice.
Well, Ben's caught it. We didn't lose to him. The refs cheated us out of a game.
Okay, that time, but the other time.
Okay, yeah. So theoretically, he only beat us once. But with LeBron, there's such a pantheon of athletes, NBA players that you can put above him, that it doesn't really affect it. Jordan's first and foremost, in a lot of people's minds. I know not in yours, RJ, but in a lot of people's minds, MJ is always going to be the GOAT, right? And then you have guys that you have to look around like Magic Johnson. And then you got to look at guys like, Larry Bird. And then you got to look at guys like Bill Russell. And then you got to look at guys. I mean, there's just so many names you can pick off that you can put in that comparable category of LeBron James. I'm sorry, there just are in the NBA. In the NFL, you really don't have that. I mean, you have a couple of quarterbacks that have multiple NFL titles, Super Bowl titles. You have a couple that have more than two, and then the list gets very short from there, right? You've got Troy Aikman with 3. You've got Joe Montana with 4. You've got
Terry Bradshaw
with what, 3?
4.
But the list gets very, very small and compact in that sense. You don't have that in the NBA, man. You got multiple stars that have multiple championships. Kobe has 6 or 5. MJ's got 6. Bill Russell had 11. Dude, you got double-digit championships. All right? So he's got more championships than he's got fingers. That dude got championship rings on his toes, So
I don't think he puts them on his toes, but
you don't know that. Maybe Bill Russell's walking kind of lopsided because he got him on his toes. But my point is,
I'm no doctor, but it could just be that he's old.
well,
Wow.
that might be the case. But my point is, in the NBA, it's not as with LeBron. There's such a long list of athletes that you can put in that same realm as him. You can't do that with those guys. And I just hate Aaron Rodgers just because in the NFC, and I hate Tom Brady just because he's got NFL, Super Bowl titles.
Yeah, I was going to kind of play off of that point there because in the Cowboys, their resurgence right before the 90s, really the team that always seemed to take them out was the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, the biggest thorn in the Cowboy side was Jerry Rice. Aside from Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. That guy was he's one of the best of all time. But, and I hated Jerry Rice with a passion. I hated him. And then, after he retired and left the game, and you start really looking at what these guys achieved. And I said, you know what? I hated him because I'm a Cowboys fan and he didn't play for the Cowboys. But when you take him in context, he was greatness. Same thing about MJ. I think we talked about during when we were reviewing the Last Dance miniseries, the documentary, was that at the time I was not a Michael Jordan fan. I hated Michael Jordan until, again, after he came back from retirement. And at that point, I said, well, when a guy like this, one guy can really swing the outcome of not just a season, of a championship team and make the difference, then I got to acknowledge this guy is greatness. And so now, looking back, he's greatness. I'm going to feel the same way at Tom Brady. I hated Tom Brady mainly because he won all those titles, but he was in New England and not in Dallas, right? I think when Tom Brady eventually walks away, there's no way you can argue and say he wasn't the greatest of all time.
No, you won't be able to. And as much as I dislike him, I'm not going to not say he's not the GOAT.
Right.
Until they prove that he's an alien or a robot. And then I'll tell him to go F himself. But with Aaron Rodgers, I'll never like Aaron Rodgers. I always have a hatred for that dude just because he's so hateable, man. He just is. He's got a ugly, smug face that somebody just needs to punch him. He just has such a punchable face. Like if I saw him walking down the street and I'm like, hey, there's Aaron Rodgers, and hey, I might go to jail for 30 days, but whatever.
I think that interaction would go different than you think it would.
No, I don't think it would. Because he's too dumb to realize I'm coming to punch him in the face.
Wow.
Well, Oh, well, never mind. I mean, he'll probably never see this podcast. So
all right, so let's evolve this now, and let's talk a little bit about the upcoming Super Bowl, because I don't think it surprises anybody that the Chiefs are back in it. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, that guy he's legit too. I mean, the guy's got ice in his veins, and they were one game away from having a perfect season themselves. They only lost one game this season, right?
I'm going to be honest with you.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Man,
I was more worried about other, crying my heart out from the Cowboys sucking yet again.
Yeah.
Things like that. But,
yeah. Okay. I gotcha. But I mean, I'm pretty sure they only lost one game this season.
Well, either way, I mean, they had a good enough record to the point that they were the top seed in the AFC. They had the bye.
14-2, so they lost 2 games.
They only lost 2 games. I mean, it's either way, it's impressive. Whether it's 1 or 2 games,
right?
To only lose that many is, I mean.
Well, and I heard an interesting stat about Patrick Mahomes that since his freshman year in college, he's never lost a game by more than a single score. Wow. I haven't verified that, but I heard that. I think they were talking about on the ticket that that Patrick Mahomes, since his freshman year in college, has not lost a game by more than a single score.
That's incredible.
That is incredible. I mean, that speaks to his greatness, right? And so, I was telling RJ, in this Super Bowl, I'm actually going for Tampa Bay, and well, hold on. Listen to my rationale.
That's what I said.
Listen to my rationale.
And his rationale, I've already heard it. I don't think it'll change your mind.
All right, so RJ, I'm going to edit this week's episode because I'm just going to put a blank space right there where he's talking right now.
Okay, so here's for you. Edit this out.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, edit that out. Here, let me show it to you again just in case you missed it.
God.
So you have to edit it out twice. But so my rationale and thinking is this, because it's more from a selfish reason.
Okay.
And I'll admit that straight out. That when everybody talks about the greatest franchises in NFL history, I want this to be right in the thick of that conversation, right? And so right now, Jay, tell me who the dynasties are in the last 40 years.
In the last 40 years, New England. Dallas, Pittsburgh.
And San Francisco.
Yeah.
Your boy, Joe Montana. Those have been the 4 dynasties that have been in these last 40 years, right? The Steelers in the 70s, the Niners in the 80s, the Cowboys in the 90s. You got to go back
50 years if you're counting the Steelers as the 70s, bro.
Well, okay, you're right. All right, fine. Granted, the Cowboys in the 90s, and then the Patriots in the 2000s and the 2010s. I mean, so you've had 4 dynasties. Well, I want that to be an extremely exclusive club, right? And again, not cheering against Patrick Mahomes because I'm actually a big Patrick Mahomes fan. I also like Kansas City because that team was moved there and founded by Lamar Hunt.
Right.
Great Lamar.
The great Lamar Hunt, who's from Dallas, Texas. Okay, or DFW, Texas. So
they were started out as the Dallas Texans.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So to me, that's a good reason for me to cheer for them. I'm more cheering against them because of, again, I want that dynasty culture, that dynasty club to be as small as possible, so that just kind of gives the prestige of the Cowboys being among it that much more weight.
So does 2 Super Bowl wins in a row make them a dynasty?
Well, but here's the thing. I mean, if they win this year, who's most likely going to beat them next year? You tell me.
Dallas Cowboys.
I pray, but I mean, come on, let's just be realistic. Because I mean, if they're able to hold most of that team most of the pieces together in that team, they're going to be the automatic favorite to win it that following year. So, I mean, it's going to have to take someone coming out of nowhere and surprise them, or some sort of injury, some sort of devastating injury.
Well, I think in this day and age, though, that it's
going to be hard to read.
No. I think when you look at the fact that other than New England, and the reason why New England is because Belichick doesn't give a shit about players' feelings and about all that other stuff.
Sure.
Is that like most Super Bowl winners, when you win, especially when you win multiple, their coaching staff's going to start to get picked over.
Sure.
Players are going to start to leave in free agency because they're going to start, they're going to get offers from other teams to, hey, man, play over here. They're going to get picked up.
Kansas City is a small market. The guys who, might be on their last payday are going to want to go to a big market where they can get as many endorsement deals as possible.
They were a small market.
Well,
I guarantee they're growing.
Even if they win 2 Super Bowls, bro, they're still a small market because they're
not Dallas. They're not.
They're a Midwest city with no viable means to grow into a big market because they are the Midwest. When you look at cities like Dallas, like LA, like New York, these guys, they're East Coast and West Coast. They are what they are because they're East Coast and West Coast. And Dallas is just in such a hub, market-wise of commerce, that Kansas City doesn't have that advantage, man.
I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why. Because of this thing, because of social media, because, look, Golden State, you tell me Golden State Warrior. So in California, right, who's the team of California?
The Lakers. Everybody knows.
Bar none. But yet, you can't tell me that you didn't see your share of Golden State Warrior fans here in DFW, because all of a sudden TV, telephone, internet, social media proliferated.
Oh, wow. Okay, now I got you.
So what I'm saying is you're trying to define that market by geography. And I'm telling you, it's no longer defined just by geography. I'm telling you, it's nationwide. So people walking around with Golden State jerseys here in Dallas, Fort Worth, or any other part of the country are showing you that these markets are blending over.
Yes.
I'm telling you, the same thing is people are cheering for Kansas City.
I hear you, and you have a point. You do. But they were wearing Steph Curry jerseys. They were not wearing Andrew Bogut jerseys. And we're talking about I'm not talking about Pat Mahomes. I'm not talking about Travis Kelce. I'm not talking about Tyreek Hill. I'm talking about the other players who aren't going to get top. They're not the top of their position.
And the bottom line is, Golden State is still a West Coast city, man.
Yeah, it's still California.
Okay, so let me ask you this then.
Because look at the Raiders, the Rams. I mean, any team that you put over there on the West Coast, and this is why it was so inconceivable for the NFL for so long not to have a team in LA. They went decades without a team in LA before the Rams moved back to LA, before the Raiders moved back to LA, and then the Raiders bailed for Las Vegas. And they're still West Coast. The Golden State Warriors are still a West Coast team, dude. And there's no way you can convince me that because they're not on the West Coast and close to the LA market, that they're not going to be more hyped than Kansas City, which is in Missouri in the middle of BFB United States.
And here, look, I'll give you this. The Kansas City Chiefs fan is probably a better overall fan than any fan from the LA Rams, because there's so much to do in LA. They're only going to care about the team when the team is good. Kansas City fans will stay true to the team because they love the team. That's how it is. I mean, and it kind of brings up something I wanted to mention is the fact that if you look at it, Florida had teams in. I texted this to you guys, including if you include this Super Bowl, not including last Super Bowl. They're going to have a team in this Super Bowl. They had a team in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. They had a team in
the
NBA Finals, and a team in the
World Series.
Yeah, World Series. I mean, if the big markets didn't matter, stuff like that still wouldn't be happening.
Man, Tampa Bay's killing it this year.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately,
sure, dude. The Tampa Bay Rays, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Bucks.
Yeah, they just don't have a basketball team.
Other than the Miami Heat.
You're telling me that Tampa Bay is a major market then?
No,
but it's Florida.
It's still an East Coast team. But hold on, you have to kind of discount Florida to begin with because the Florida sports market sucks anyway. Because other than the Dolphins, which haven't been good since Dan Marino left, they don't have anything. When the Marlins were winning World Series, the stadiums were still half empty. When the Tampa Bay Devil Rays were in the World Series last year, nobody gave their stadium was still half empty. When the Miami Heat was in the NBA Finals and twice within 5 years, nobody, half the fans that were there were watching the Mavs in 2011. No. Don't go back and look at the games. Go back and watch the stats, dude. There's so many Mavs fans that are there in Miami watching the Mavs, waiting for the Mavs to win the championship, that it was crazy. Okay? But still, the bottom line is Florida sports has to be discounted because they suck. Florida sports fan is ridiculous to begin with. I don't know. That's just my point. I forgot what.
Well, I guess. Yeah.
So I honestly think that it's, first of all, this is becoming such a homogenized, sports fan environment that I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs' popularity is only going to be limited to really just that geographical market. I guarantee you, America loves a winner, right? And right now, because the Kansas City Chiefs were, relatively nobodies until they won their first Super Bowl. If they win this year, and then they're going to be favored going into next year.
Well, I'm not debating that. You're right, and the whole point of this was what truly constitutes a dynasty, right? But I'm saying that after this year, if they win another Super Bowl, if they win back-to-back Super Bowls, their coaching staff is not going to be the same next year because their coaches are going to get picked over for OC jobs, DC jobs. Eventually, somebody's going to come out of there. Who were they talking about? Romeo Crennel come out of there as a head coach, right? So their coaching staff's going to get picked over. And then it's up to Andy Reid to be able to replace those guys with comparable people to continue on that same path. Then they're going to start losing players to free agency, dude. That's just the way it is, right? The only team that has been able to keep that model the same has been the Patriots for the last 20 years. Because even the Cowboys, when they were at their height, when they lost Dave Wannstedt, when they lost Norv Turner, that's when everything kind of started to falter. And then they started losing players to free agency. Ken Norton Jr. left. You had players that were leaving because they were Super Bowl winners. They were getting picked over.
And there's no way for me to counteract that argument because the fact of the matter is the most important piece left, and that was Jimmy.
Yeah.
I would have been interested to see what would have happened had Jimmy stayed and let him go recruit the talent, let him go replace his coaching staff, let him continue to be in effect the GM of this team. Who knows? But I mean, I can't really offer a counter argument to that because
and I'm going to throw this wrinkle in there is that I think that you would have still seen it because at that time is when you start to have the advent of the salary cap, and that's not something that he had prior to those Super Bowl runs, right? The salary cap didn't come in until what, 93, 94?
Probably
92.
I was a kid, so I couldn't.
Unrestricted free agency didn't really roll in until like the 92 seasons because remember they used to have those Plan B free agents where they had to go through a process to be able to become a free agent. So the market and the way that the economics and the way that everything has changed in the NFL is so different from what it was when Jimmy built that team. And you're right. If Jimmy had stayed, they may have won another Super Bowl. But even if they had won 2 more Super Bowls, I think toward the tail end of that Jimmy's career, you would have started to see the team start to falter because of the fact that his
but that would have been 5-6 years in. You're only talking about year one. You're only talking about year one of Kansas City. You're talking year one. You're talking year 2 now of Kansas City.
Right.
So you can't tell me that, okay, yeah, eventually everything fades. I mean, the only anomaly in all of this has been New England. That's the only anomaly. Yeah. The fact that they've been on top for as long as they have is, I mean, it's unprecedented, and we'll never, ever see it again. When Belichick walks away, when Brady finally retires, we will never, ever see that level of a dynasty ever again. I don't believe that because of all the things you just highlighted. I agree with you to that end. But then doesn't that somewhat modify the definition of a dynasty?
Well, I can't answer that question, but what I was going to
say, that's kind of hard to. That's what I'm saying. What defines a dynasty now?
And what I was going to say is, I think when you talk about, this being early on for Kansas City versus, the Cowboy situation, was that it wasn't as common back then for coaches to leave like that. Like, coaches stayed because they wanted to create winning organizations, whereas now you're seeing coaches constantly being changed. Coaches don't have as long to get things right as they used to. They can be put on the hot seat pretty quickly, and guys want to get their opportunities and their. How many defensive coordinators has New England had? I mean, that's why people say Belichick is so great, because coaching staff has changed in and out. And even though, yes, he had Tom Brady to go, and that's a part of it too, defensive coordinators changed, offensive coordinators changed, and they were still great. Now, whether it was because of Brady or Belichick, that's
I think step one for Kansas City is, they have to win the Super Bowl this year.
Right.
And then the next question becomes, if they win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, within a 5-year time span, then do we constitute Kansas City being a dynasty? I think that's the fair way to look at it. And I think that's where we kind of need to go from there.
All right. So before we call it a night, boys, who are you rooting for then, Uncle Jay?
Oh, Kansas City, dude.
Me too.
F. Tom Brady.
All right.
I hope his jet crashes on the way to the Super Bowl.
Tampa Bay.
Any score predictions?
Bay.
Tampa. You don't have to give a specific score.
Okay, Kansas City 56-14.
Damn, I'll say Kansas City wins by 2 touchdowns.
You say Kansas City by 2 touchdowns?
Yeah.
I say Tampa Bay 27, Kansas City 24.
Tampa
Bay.
Man, why don't you just go buy a jersey then? Damn.
I know, man.
Well, hold on. Here's you guys, because you guys cut me off. You didn't let me finish the rest, and I know we're going to end it here soon. But we already acknowledged Tom Brady's the GOAT. We already acknowledged that. So winning one more Super Bowl isn't going to make him any more of a GOAT than he already is. So for me, it's a no law. It's a kind of a no win proposition either way. Again, I was just trying to defend what's going to be the next dynasty. But I don't say that I'm in it. I'm cheering for Tom Brady. It's just more of I'm rooting against Kansas City. That's all.
I hear you, and I completely understand, and I can sympathize with that, because in years past I probably would have agreed with you. But the point of the matter is, the Cowboys just need to get better and do their part to go.
And that ain't going to happen until the Arkansas knucklehead passes away. I hate to say that.
I hear you on Jerry, and I think you're effing nuts. So either way.
Well, boys, it was a good episode. We just want to thank each and every one of you that are tuned in, whether it's visually or on the audio format. Thank you for locking in with the Now That You Mention It podcast again. The three of us know that time is everyone's most valuable asset, so we appreciate you giving us a piece of that. We really enjoy doing this, and whether it's only 5 people or 50, we definitely appreciate you giving us that time to be knuckleheads. And if you don't mind, we'd like to ask for a few more seconds just for some feedback. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podbean, or Google Podcasts, please subscribe, follow, whatever it is, turn on the notifications, and leave us a rating and review if you can. If you are dialed in visually via YouTube, please hit that like, subscribe, click the bell to get notified, so when the new episode drops, you can be one of the first to know. You'll find us on Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter by typing in the Now That You Mention It podcast. And if you want to make it easier on yourself, just go to nowthatyoumentionit.org, and you can find all those links there. And with that being said, with 1 week coming to an end and another beginning, we hope that you had a great week and write another great chapter in your book of life.
Okay, before you close it out, hey Jay, I just have one question.
Sure.
On the Now That You Mention It podcast merch page, are you going to put that the Speedos that you were showing me that you were going to buy for yourself?
No, you know what? I decided to go with the classic man thong, so I think that's what we're going to go with.
Oh my God!
I can't imagine we'll sell too many of those, but thank you, boys, and thank you to Jesse P, because we couldn't do it without you.
Talk to you later, boys.
All right.